Hi, folks. It's Gary here, and a very warm welcome to a very special show here on the Fourth Official. Joining me to give us a very exclusive interview and a bit of an insight into what life was like inside dressing rooms all across Scottish football is former Scotland under 21 international Kai Kennedy. Kai, big thank you for joining us here on the Fourth Official. How are we?
I'm all good. Yourself? Glad to be here.
Very well. Yeah, very well. Thanks, mate. Now, obviously, I appreciate you coming on and speaking a bit about your career and your time, obviously, across multiple clubs in Scottish football. But we will predominantly remember you as a player who came up through the ranks at Rangers. And I think, given the kind of current situation where we find ourselves in, early part of 2025, where the club's finances are as they are at the moment, and there's obviously been an awful lot of money squandered in terms of some foreign imports and players coming up from England that haven't quite worked on big wages, and we're starting to see some more youngsters blooded into the first team, the likes of Beale and Finlay Curtis. So over recent matches, it's just started to kind of get that question again in and around that pathway from the kind of youth development areas within Rangers and other big teams in Scotland. Celtic are the same, for players to actually make it into the first team. So it's great to kind of get your insight in terms of what that was like for you just a few years back, and kind of get your take on where we are just now with the kind of current group of youngsters that are in and around the club.
Yep. No, I think when I was growing up, when I got the age to 16, 17, listen, the academy is absolutely brilliant. It's probably one of probably the best, if not the two of them are. All the academies are brilliant, but I think Rangers is the best academy you've got. And I think personally, at the time when I was breaking into the first team, um, Rangers were actually trying to stop 10 in a row, which was a big part of probably young players not getting the chances and the minutes, because it was such a massive season for the club, as we all know. So for a young person at the time, for me, it was hard, but to be a part of the club at that time and stopping it, of course, was absolutely amazing. And I think now, as you said, the club's going through a really hard time at the moment, but I think looking at the young ones who have come in, they're showing that they can do well and they've proved themselves. I think when I was coming up, Bailey Rice was one of the big names that I can remember, and I think you can tell when he came on against Manchester United that the quality he brings. And I think the boy Finlay Curtis, he was a lot younger than me, so for me, I didn't really know him, but he's done the same, and it's amazing to see two young players come through the academy and getting a chance because of the circumstances Rangers are in at the moment. But
And I think if you look back at, like, I'm obviously a lot older than you guys, so I'm showing my age a wee bit here, but we've always enjoyed being able to see players coming through the ranks, and even the likes of Barry Ferguson, more recently, the likes of Nathan Patterson. There's the fans can relate a lot more to a young lad that's came up, that knows the club, that's been a fan, that is willing to maybe give that extra, maybe 10, 20%, that a foreign import or a player that it's just a job for them, rather than they're there because it's a job, but it's also that they're a Rangers man themselves. And I think all the best Rangers teams over the last kind of 30, 40 years have all had a nucleus of homegrown talent.
yeah, no, of course, I think as a young boy coming up, when you're coming through an academy, the dream is to get there and play in the first team. Everyone knows how hard it can be. You've got a team of 20 when you're growing up at under 18s B team level, and you always used to get told there might only be one that will ever make it. And see, when you do see a player make it, like Nathan Patterson's my best mate in football, outside of football, so I made my debut on the same day as him. And if you look at him now, it's honestly so happy for him. It's just a joy to see. And when he came into the team, you can see how well he done, because I think at that time Tavernier got injured. So and the other right back, I can't remember who it was at the time. Sorry, also wasn't there. So Nathan got his chance, and if you look at it, how well Nathan done, he got his big move to Everton, and he's done well, and he's playing in the Premier League, every boy's dream. So I think when you get a young player coming through, it means so much to them. When I made my debut, it was I dreamt for that day for since the age of 12 when I went to Rangers, and to get that chance to play in front of 50,000. one of the best stadiums in the world. It was a dream come true.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about that day then, Kai, because obviously coming up through the ranks, through the kind of youth development, you were always a name that was one that had a bit of buzz about yourself. There was a lot of comparisons with other players that maybe were slightly unfair at the time, but in terms of there was a big kind of clamour for you to get your opportunity and kind of be involved in the first team. Maybe a little bit like Alec Lowry as well, a player that's got a little bit of something different, but able to kind of be a creative player that's be able to take a player on, look for a pass, and we always like that. And I think especially over the last few years when creative players like that kind of link men between the midfield and the strikers has maybe been a bit of a premium. That's why someone like Yanis Hadji is so kind of well loved, I think, because he's got that bit of guile about them. So I think there was a lot of excitement about trying to get you involved and get you in and around the first team and onto the pitch.
Yeah, it was. When Gerrard came in, that's when my time kind of kicked on a wee bit. I started training with the first team more regularly, and honestly, what an honour it was to be there. It was everybody's dream at the age of 17 to be training with Rangers first team, and I was in a few squads. I went to, I can remember it was Hamilton Accies away, Braga away, which was the game we won, and what a moment that was just to be there. And then finally I got my chance against Stranraer in the Cup, and it was amazing. It was a great time, but unfortunately, I think if everyone remembers the contract situation that went on with me at the time, there was a lot of things said, and probably one of the regrets that I was listening to other people other than myself, and I got mixed up in a lot of things during the time, and that probably set me back a good bit, because that's when the moment I went out on loan to Inverness, which I loved Inverness at the time, and I done well at Inverness, but during the time of the contract, I can remember being round the first team, and because I hadn't signed my new deal, I got put back round to the B team, which is understandable. That's the way it should be. Do you know what I mean? And that was from me personally listening to other people rather than doing what I wanted to do, kind of. So it's all about learning, and at that age, as a 17-year-old, you're still learning. You don't really know about a lot of things, and listen, we got through it, but that's one thing I look back at and go, was that the mistake that happened, and is that why I got set back a wee bit? But ultimately, the games I was involved in and being round there and getting a chance to play and putting the jersey on was, as I said, it was a dream come true.
In terms of that jersey from that match, is that something that you've held on to? Is it on the wall in the house, or what's happened with it?
Yeah, that's a jersey that I'll always keep. That one will be. That was my first ever professional game. So, and with a club that I wanted to, I'd grown up in, and wanted to make my debut for. So, as I can say, not a lot of boys can say that they've played in front of 50,000 at their dream club. Do you know what I mean? So, that jersey will stick by with me for life.
Yeah. In terms of being a young lad then and around the team, you mentioned kind of making that impact into first team training with Steven Gerrard. Obviously, an awful lot's been said about the kind of Gerrard years and how he raised standards with the club after what had been a very kind of difficult time previously. Firsthand, what was it like being in the dressing room with the likes of Steven Gerrard and obviously Mick Beale, who was well renowned as being a coach, whilst obviously Steven Gerrard was there. Obviously had these troubles when he was the manager himself, but both of them obviously were very, very successful in that period when they were together with that 55 season. So talk to me a bit about what Gerrard was like in and around the kind of training pitch.
I think every player's the same. Right? When you're growing up watching the Premier League, you're one of the most players you're watching at that age is probably Steven Gerrard, who's a legend of the game and such a big name. So when he comes in, it's like, wow, you're sitting in a change room and you've got Steven Gerrard sitting there. But when they both came in, as I said, at the start, I probably wasn't round the first team, and then as time goes on, I went round every day and started to get into training, and just to even watch him pass a ball and join in training, sometimes it was like, wow. But I'll always be forever grateful that Steven Gerrard was the man that gave me my debut, and Mick Beale, who was a great coach and all the other staff, Gary McAllister, who was brilliant as well. They were all top coaches. You know what I mean? I would still say this day, they're the best I've had. And you could tell what Mick brung to the coaching staff at the time. I was actually surprised personally that he didn't do as well as he did, because at the time with Gerrard, he was absolutely brilliant. But I think
And what do you put that down to? Do you put that down to the fact that he just had too much to do in terms of not just being a coach, but having to be involved in transfers and recruitment, and maybe just the role as a manager was very different to the role as a coach?
I'm not too sure how. Obviously, I wasn't there at the time when Mick came in. I don't really know what went on, so I couldn't put a finger on it what it would be. But I was just surprised myself personally from what I had seen when I was at Rangers when Mick was there, that how much of a top coach he was.
Yep. As a midfield player, then obviously you mentioned Steven Gerrard and Gary Mack being in the building. What was it about their coaching that kind of helped your game?
I think it was just the belief they had in me to come round and train with a first team. They're trying to stop 10 in a row, which was a massive season. And just to have that belief that I can come round every day and train with all the top great players and not look out of place. Because sometimes when you go down to a first team as a young boy, you could maybe shy away or whatever. But I went round and they gave me the belief and the confidence that I was there because I should have been. It wasn't I was just there to make me happy. It was because I was putting the training performances in and playing with the B team and putting performances in. So they gave me the confidence and the belief to train round there every day. As a young boy dreaming likes a training round at the training ground with all the best players. So I think they gave me a lot of belief and confidence in myself.
In terms of players in the dressing room, obviously we've seen this week Scotty Arfield going back to Falkirk, kind of where it all started for him. But having the likes of him, Andy Halliday, kind of proper seasoned pros in that kind of midfield area, what were they like in the dressing room?
They were top. I couldn't speak highly enough of Scotty Arfield. Personally, as a young boy, he helped massively. He would make you feel comfortable. He would chat to you, and what a top player. Someone that I would look up to, going, he's does all the right things, great pro, helps all the young boys, and just a top guy to be around, and you can learn from the best, and he was one of the best. And I think Andy Halliday, he was there as well, and he was absolutely brilliant with me as well, and great player as well. But I think he might have left maybe at some point, or maybe I went on loan, but him as well was absolutely brilliant. The two of them were great, and I think when you're a young boy coming through and they've done it at their clubs coming through and they're Scottish, so they know they help you a wee bit more than the foreign boys, maybe because they know what it's like to come through as a young boy stepping up to first team training, because it can be nervous and a wee bit daunting. You know what I mean when you go round at first, but they were great helps, and I couldn't speak highly enough about both of them.
Yep. The captain, Tav, gets a bit of a unfair press at times in terms of his kind of captaincy style, and I think a lot of that harks back to people of a certain generation who link a captain's armband with someone like a Richard Gough or a Terry Butcher. But Tav has always been for me as a fan and someone that watches week in week out for the last 30 years from the stands, as a player who kind of leads by example rather than that kind of shouty telling players where to go. Um, what was your kind of take, obviously having been in and around the dressing room with Tav, and obviously as a player who's been at the club now for an immense period of time? We'll never ever see the likes of that from fullback probably ever again. But what's Tav like in terms of kind of driving those standards, and what's your take on him as a captain? Because I know he gets a bit of stick.
I think Tav's a great captain, and what he's done for the club is immense. I think the stick he gets shouldn't be the case. I think if you look at right backs all across the world, what he's done for the club, the amount of goals and assists a right back is providing is absolutely incredible. And as a player and as a person, he's an immense player and a great captain. And for me as a young boy as well, he helped me a lot just as being the captain, and he's a good speaker and he does lead by example. He's a top professional and he does everything right. And I think you can tell he does everything right because he's barely ever injured. He plays in week in, week out for the last 8, 9, 10 years, whatever it's been. And he's always there. And he always takes the stick when he gets there, but he'll always turn up the next week and provide. And I think what he's done for the club has been outstanding. I think the moment Tav goes, I think a lot of people might realise what they've actually lost.
Yep. You mentioned earlier that loan spell to Inverness, and obviously that was kind of cut short due to COVID and lockdown, and the fact, obviously, that the leagues were kind of ended early. Obviously, a huge amount of controversy about that time in Scottish football and the fact that the leagues were called. As someone that was in the game at that time, what was the kind of feeling of kind of playing games in empty stadiums afterwards, and when the football started back again that following season? Must have been a very different feel to being in a football club during that time.
Yeah, so I think when I went to Inverness, and I think it was the start of COVID, and the football had just started back, as you said. And for me, as a 17-year-old, leaving home and going away up 4 hours at the age of 17, I thought it would be easy at the time, but of course, COVID hit, and I was up in Inverness myself, and I had the club Inverness looked after me, gave me a house up there, and I was in it to myself, and you couldn't really leave the house. So I was just stuck up at Inverness myself, and kind of lost, just a 17-year-old boy. I'm still a kid at this time, and I found it dead hard to get used to it. I did kind of get used to it, but I started playing and I was doing all right. But when it came to January, I thought I had to come back home just because I wasn't feeling my best, and when you're not feeling your best as a player, you're not going to get the best performances. So Inverness was a great club and looked after me, and I loved the manager, I loved all the players, and I'm thankful for that. But at the time, the right decision was to come back home, and I went to, I think it was Raith Rovers in the January transfer window, where I had arguably one of the best seasons I've had, and that was under John McGlynn, and that was during the COVID season with no fans as well. It was it's weird. You don't want to play with no fans. It's, as a player, you love to see all the fans there. Do you know what I mean? It's the excitement you get from the game, and I think no player would want to ever go through COVID again. I don't think anybody in the world would, but as a player, you don't want to see empty stadiums.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, and what was it like in terms of all the kind of protocols? And obviously, we found it difficult in terms of testing and social distancing and all that sort of thing. But as a player, what was that like from the inside? How often were you kind of being tested? And were you in a kind of separate bubble, or kind of what was that like? I know there was obviously a lot of mentioned Nathan Patterson earlier, and he got himself in a bit of bother for going out during that time. But it must have been very different for anyone. Like I was a 40-year-old at the time, it was a bit different, but as kind of 17, 18, that's not the life that you're used to at that age, where you're especially in that public eye. It must have been incredibly difficult.
Yeah, it was. As you said, you couldn't really do much, but when you're that age, you don't really know what to do when you're stuck in the house all day. So, you'd go into training, you would test. I think mostly every single day. I think it was every single day you'd do a test, and I can actually remember going away. I got called up to the 21s one day in Scotland, and we went to the hotel. And I actually got there, and it was a temperature checks, and my temperature was, I think it was way above what it should have been. And I actually got sent home because of it, just because of my temperature, because I don't think the testing results were back yet. So just for the protocol, I had to go home and actually miss the full camp at that time, which was, when you look back, it's such strange times, and that was an opportunity I missed to get a cap under my belt for the 21s. But I think in general, as you said, we all make mistakes, don't we? If you're looking at Nathan and went out and had a party, I don't think he'll be really bothering anymore.
No, I don't think so. But yeah, it's different times. Obviously, mentioning kind of being in and around the club for that kind of 55 season. Obviously, the celebrations afterwards very, very different in terms of all the fans being outside the stadium rather than kind of inside the stadium. But in terms of what it was like to be in and around the club when you're winning that title. Talk to us a little bit about some of the stuff kind of behind the scenes.
I know it was just of course it was a huge season, and it's probably one of the best, arguably the best season I'll ever have. Do you know what I mean? Just being involved and being part of it. But I think it was the first 6 months I was mostly part of it more than anything, and the last 6 months I probably wasn't as much. But it was an incredible time for the club. Do you know what I mean? It was such a big season, and to have done that was incredible. And seeing Nathan play, because Nathan was playing at the time, so seeing him, watching him do it as well, seeing your best friend make it to that level and playing week in, week out, which was incredible as well. It was just probably the best season I'll ever have in football. If I can get better, then I'll be really happy.
Yeah. Obviously, when you kind of finished up with Rangers, the kind of biggest kind of time you had were when you were out on loan to kind of Falkirk, where that seemed to kind of be the kind of biggest loan spell of your career in terms of kind of playing week in, week out. And that was just obviously before the kind of contract finished with Rangers. So, Falkirk, talk to me a little bit about obviously your time there. They look as if they're doing very, very well this season and potentially going to be back up in the Premier League next year, which for a team like Falkirk, it's been a long time coming. But what was your experience there?
Now, of course, so I actually had John McGunn at Raith Rovers at the time. He was there, and the year I went there, I done excellent for him, and I absolutely enjoyed playing for him and loved him as a manager and loved all the staff as well. So when he phoned me that summer, it was a no-brainer for me because the season before I had was a tough one and didn't really play as much as I liked and a few injuries. So when I got the phone call for John McGlynn, it was a no-brainer, and I went to Falkirk, and probably as my goals and assists, it was the best season I've had for numbers wise, and one of the most under John McGlynn. It's so enjoyable to play, and I think a lot of players will say the same. And I'm so delighted for him that, of course, he went and won League One last year and doing so well this year because he deserves it for all the hard work and effort he puts in. Because as a manager and as a player, looking at the manager, you can see how much he does for the team, and his man management is incredible as well. So, and of course, the way he plays football suited me more than anything. You can tell we're watching it against the likes of Celtic and through the Championship as well, the ones that are on TV and stuff, that the way he plays football is top stuff, and you don't find that a lot in Scottish football, not in a bad way, but he plays from the back and just loves passing, and it suited me as a player because that's the kind of player I am. And yeah, I absolutely loved it. And that season after that, I got a move to York. So
Yeah, different world going down out of Scotland, obviously for the first time. So obviously when the time came to leave Rangers, did you have lots of offers on the table and the York one stood out for you, or can I talk to me about how that time was?
of course, when you're leaving the boyhood club at the age of, you've been there for 10 years or so, 11 years, it's a sad moment, but it was time, and I think everyone knew it was time to move on and try and take the next challenge. And the first few months, it was slow. I had a few offers here and there, but nothing that I fancied. And I think as a player, you know when something feels right, and a few things didn't. So when York came up, I had just exchanged. At this time, I had exchanged agents. So when that York came up, it felt right. I felt like the right moment to take the next step, and I thought I was ready for it. And so I went down to York, and I actually got signed. The manager that signed me, I signed. I think it was on the Wednesday or Thursday. And we played a game the Saturday, and he actually got the sack on the Saturday. So that wasn't the best of starts to my York career. And unfortunately, I went down there and it just didn't work out. But that's football for you. It's picked up a few injuries, and we had. I think I had three managers there in the space of 7 months, which kind of says a lot. It was a struggle of a year. I can personally say that I struggled on and off the field last year. It was. I'm grateful for York for taking me and helping me and giving me the training and everything I needed for the year. But I just struggled personally on and off the field, and it's different down in England. it's not the same as it is up here, and the football's a bit different. It's a lot more athletes down there than there is up here. That's what I can say. But I still enjoyed it. But I think the time was right to come back home again and rebuild myself. And I feel like at this moment in time, I feel like I'm at the best place I can be. I know I picked up an injury in November time, a bad one. But arguably, I would say that's the best football I was playing for the last 7 games that I had played before that. And I felt confident and I felt back to myself again, which I probably not felt like that since Falkirk. So it was good to have that feeling back. But unfortunately, I picked up the injury and it's been a setback. But I've tried to take it as a positive this time and not lose ahead a wee bit, because normally I could get upset, lose ahead, and this time I've not. I've took it as a positive and I've worked really hard to get back fit, and the way it's looking is everything's going okay. So hopefully back at the end of the month playing again and have a good run at the end of the season.
That would be ideal. What's the ambitions for Queens this season? Or in terms of is it just taking it game by game, or is there something that obviously the team are working towards?
I think at this moment in time, it's got to be game by game. You can't look ahead, but I think ultimately the goal is to get promotion. That was the goal at the start of the season, so nothing's changed. And I think we're 3 points off the top for now, but there's still a long way to go. No league's won in February, so hopefully by May the 3rd that we're the ones getting promoted and having a party. That's what I would like. But of course, we need to get the heads down and big games coming up. So I think this is the best part of the season for every club. When you look at all the fixtures going, this is the business part of the season where every point matters, and it should matter throughout the season, but I think now the league's very tight. I think 6 teams or so could win our league at the moment. So it's an exciting league and it's an exciting league to play in, and I'm really looking forward to getting back and trying to help the team.
And in terms of the way your game's changed since anyone that would have saw you as a youngster at Rangers, obviously you've now got 3-4 years worth of experience in the various different teams, obviously down in England as well. Has it changed your game at all in terms of what we might remember you from when you were breaking through at Rangers?
Yeah, I've changed massively. I've matured, and I think the change from academy football to first team football is massive. I think that's where a lot of people struggle, and you could say arguably I've struggled with that as well at this moment in time. But I think all these clubs I've been to, I've learned so much from each club, and I've had so many ups and so many downs. But I think through the years that I've matured, I've got to the best place for my head, mentally strong. And I think now that I'm ready to kick on, hopefully have a good end to the season and kick on again. I feel like this is the best version of me now, and I feel like I've took a couple of steps back, but it's to take them forward again. And I do believe that I can get back to the potential that everyone could see, and I hope that's what I can do.
In terms of life outside of the kind of 90 minutes on the pitch, I know you're involved in some other projects as well, Kai. So talk to us a little bit about that.
And also, what actually happened was when I got my injury, October, November time, I know it was a big injury, and I got told I was out for 45 months. So I had a lot of thinking time, and I thought to myself, I'm going to start up a coaching business, and it's went amazing so far. I've loved every single minute, and I took it as a positive being injured this time. I feel like I've got a lot of experience to pass on to younger people, and the main thing is that they're enjoying it. And if I can improve them, then that would be brilliant. And it's something I worked on over the last few months to get going and get started, and it's doing well at the moment, and I'm really, really enjoying it. And I'm just looking to hopefully help as much people as I can and pass that on experience to the younger people that might need wee bit of help or want a bit of coaching. So now at this moment in time, I'm really loving it and excited for it. So it's been great so far.
A different feeling kind of being in the tracksuit rather than out on the pitch itself. Kind of makes you maybe change that skill set a little bit.
Yeah, it's completely different. I feel like with the injuries I've had before, I've always just been lazy or not really done much, because you train from 9 in the morning to maybe finish at 1, 2 o'clock, and you've got all this day ahead. So I just felt like the time was right to put my focus on something else rather than just always trying to worry and get back fit, and that's the most important thing. Is I want to get back fit and playing, but that takes a bit of my mind off it a wee bit sometimes because I do get upset. I'm a player who can't do his job at the moment. That's just the way football is, but I feel like that can take my mind off it a wee bit for a couple of hours, and if it's helping other young people, then I'm delighted with it. So I've really enjoyed it at the moment and just continuing to do it.
Magic. What we'll do is we can obviously post the links into the show when it goes out in terms of where people can find if they want some more information on your kind of coaching area. So we'll get that out to the troops and let them be able to kind of check that out in a bit more detail. But that's been a really, really fascinating kind of look behind the curtain a little bit in terms of professional career. I think it's very pertinent at the moment, obviously, given that Rangers have binned their B team this year and are looking to try and get a lot more of their youngsters either involved in the first team at Rangers or get the players out on loan. And we've seen a lot of bodies going out on loan just towards the tail end of the window there to get them out playing proper men's first team football all across the kind of Scottish pyramid. And I think for me, playing games is much more important in terms of a development. And you're probably seeing that with the likes of Robbie Fraser at Livingston. He's had a really positive kind of start to his time at Livy, and that can only make him a better player, I think, for when he comes back to Rangers in the summer.
Yeah, I've always said it. I think, as I said before, that academy football to first team football is massive. So I think if you can get out on loan and playing first team football as soon as you can, I think it's only going to benefit you. And as you can see, Robbie Fraser's doing very, very well at Livingston, and it's only going to benefit him. So I feel like the decision I've made is probably the best decision. I feel like because if you don't, if you don't play professional games when you leave a big club, it's always hard to find the next club if you've not played as many professional games. So the more professional games they can play and get experience around first team dressing rooms and playing against men, it's only going to benefit them. So hopefully they can come back and kick on.
Brilliant. All the best, Kai, in terms of your recovery from injury. Hopefully we can get you back on the park in the not too distant future, contributing towards what's going to be an exciting season down at Cooney of the South. And certainly we wish you all the best as well with the coaching academy as well, mate.
Thank you so much.
And thanks for spending the time to come and talk to us. Big thank you to everyone for watching as well. We'll speak to you next time here on the Fourth Official. Goodbye.
Thank you.